Hey guys, welcome into the 14. My name's Nick Cole, and we're breaking down all of the Week 5 SEC football games from a betting perspective. Today, we're talking about the Tennessee Vols visiting the Missouri Tigers. This game's going to be played at noon Eastern on Saturday at Faurot Field in Columbia, Missouri. It's going to be televised on SEC Network. The betting line for this game opened Missouri -3, and it's moved slightly as of our recording here on Thursday, where the Tigers are now a 2.5-point favorite. The over-under on the game went from opening at 67.5 down to 65. I bring in our betting analyst, Christopher Smith. Christopher, what do you think about this SEC East matchup?
Yeah, just speaking of that move, I think moving from, 18.5 to 18 is not a big move, but moving from 3 to 2.5 is a pretty big move just because of the key number there and just how often games end with a 3-point margin in college football. So definitely seems like bettors are paying attention to the quarterback news out of Tennessee. But before I get ahead of myself there, why don't we get into Nick's news and notes and you can tell us what's going on around these programs.
Yeah, sure. So let's start with weather and we'll get into injuries there in just a minute. The weather in Columbia on Saturday got a high of 76. Winds looking like it's going to be between 7 and 8 miles an hour for most of the game. And the thing to watch for here is a 67% chance for a thunderstorm. Now, as Christopher likes to point out, that usually doesn't have much of an impact on the outcome of the game. And if anything, it may talk about the total more than the side on a bet. But that being said, let's move on to the injuries. The thing that everybody wants to talk about this week is the Tennessee quarterback situation. They went into week 4 against Florida with both quarterbacks healthy after missing Joe Milton the previous week. Now this week, everybody's wondering about Hendon Hooker, who is, I guess, anointed the new starting quarterback at Tennessee after Milton started the first game, lost his job to injury. Hooker kind of outplayed him in weeks 2 and 3 and 4 even. And so now we're looking at whether or not Hooker will be ready to go on Saturday. Listening to Coach Josh Heupel through the week, they say he's been limited in practice. They haven't necessarily said, hey, this is going to happen. But the quotes as the week has gone on have led us to believe that there's a pretty good chance that he'll probably suit up on Saturday, which is good news for the Vols. They definitely look better with him under center. And then some notes for this game. Let's just talk about that quarterback situation a little bit closer, because Hooker, when he took over in week 2, they didn't come back to beat Pitt, but they were much more competitive. And I just feel like the game against the Gators, we really saw late in that game the difference between Tennessee's offense with Hooker versus Tennessee's offense with Joe Milton. When Hooker left with his injury, Milton came in and the accuracy issues were a thing again. Tennessee hit a long touchdown pass finally with Hooker under center. So it's just a situation where you're going to want to watch this game all the way up to kickoff before you place your bet, probably, to know whether or not Hooker's going to play. And like Christopher said, that may have already had an impact on the line, the way they're thinking this may trend. On the other side of the ball, talking about Missouri, they lost a 41-34 game in overtime at Boston College in week 4. Kind of an unusual Power 5 versus Power 5 non-con game. And to me, what we learned from Missouri in that game is, yeah, their offense is as good as advertised. They can move the ball up and down the field on anybody in the Power 5 even. But what I didn't like was what I saw of their run defense and just really their defense in general. I know Christopher is going to hit more on this in the betting analysis, but I just wanted to point out to you guys that entering this game, not only did they allow 41 points to a run-oriented team in Boston College, but they rank 115th in the FBS with 452.8 yards allowed in their 4 games so far. And to be honest, they haven't been playing super great opponents. You're talking about your Central Michigans, your Kentuckys, your SEMOs, your Boston College. These are not teams that they should be allowing 400 or 500 yards consistently against week after week. That's a real problem as they get into some of the meatier part of the schedule. And then the last thing I point out before I hand it over to Christopher, just that this series has been a little bit tough to predict. The 10th meeting between these SEC East teams since Missouri's joined the conference, and Mizzou actually holds a 5-4 advantage in the series, but the Vols have won the last 2 and 4 of the last 6. So it sort of started as a Gary Pinkel early era where he was getting the best of the Derek Dooley and early Butch Jones to now that we've shifted a little bit in this series. We've got a couple of newer coaches. I don't know how much that means to you in the big scheme of things. but just something to say. Who knows what's going to happen on Saturday? Christopher, do you have an idea?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not so big on raw stats in college football. I don't think they're really all that helpful. But when you look at the advanced metrics, Missouri's rush defense is 128 in EPA per snap. And there's only 130 teams at the FBS level. And I mean, that's very, very bad. And Tennessee's rush offense is 36th in the same stat. And I mean, first of all, if you're going to go on the road in the SEC and win as an underdog, dominating the ground game is a pretty good formula to be able to do that. And, you know, I think Hendon Hooker trending as if he's going to play is a huge deal in this game. I'm not going to bet on a Joe Milton-led team ever. And I can't even really bet on this game without knowing for sure if Hendon Hooker is going to play. But let's just say hypothetically that I made a bet thinking Hooker was going to play, and then I saw Milton come onto the field. I would immediately buy out of my bet by taking the other side live. If you have Milton in the game, Missouri can just put everybody in the box and leave the other receivers just uncovered and know that it doesn't matter how open they are, Jim Milton's not going to be able to hit them. So I feel like with Hendon Hooker in the game, you know, with Missouri needing to respect the pass, having such a disadvantage with their run defense is a very big deal in this matchup. Now, on the other side, even without what I think would be average SEC caliber receivers, Missouri doesn't have those. Even they don't even have average ones, but they do have a bit of an advantage throwing the ball on offense. I mean, Tyler Beatty presents a pretty good threat running the ball, but a lot of the credit goes to Connor Bazelak at quarterback and Eli Drinkwitz as head coach. They're just very good at scheming things. And Bazelak is good at getting the ball out fast and with accuracy. And you're not going to see like Missouri winning with their athletes out wide, but you know, they'll scheme up some stuff and they'll have some timing plays that allow them to get first downs. But Nick, who are you betting on this game and tell us why?
Yeah, so I don't trust Tennessee on the road just yet. I'm maybe call me skeptical of their early season performance. And since it's so quarterback dependent, as you indicated, and I'm not having to lay that many points taking the home team in Mizzou, I'm again going to back the Tigers, even though they burned me last week as a 1-point favorite at Boston College. They had a chance there and didn't pull through for me, but I'm giving one more try and we'll go Mizzou minus 2.5. And I'm going to take the under 65. Getting back to you mentioned, obviously, Mizzou has some talent at quarterback and their defense isn't very good, but 65 is a pretty stout number to cover for a couple of teams that I just don't have a whole lot of confidence in, particularly on the ball side of things to get up into the 30s like they're going to need to get to get to 65. So I don't know that I would put any real money on that, but for the purposes of our picks, I'm going to go under 65. How about you?
I think if you watched or looked at the stats with the Boston College game last week for Missouri, they were awful against the run, against a backup quarterback that couldn't do anything. He threw for what I think maybe less than 100 yards against Temple the week before. So if there was ever a game that you could just commit to stopping the run, that was it. I think Boston College ran for well over 200 yards in that game easily. That doesn't bode well at all in this matchup with Tennessee. And so I think this game could actually turn into a bit of a shootout. And I think I'm one game up on you now with a big week last week on our overall bets and a lot of games up on you on our best bets. And normally I'm the one loving the unders and you know, the square bettors love overs, of course. In this game, we're going the other way. I'm taking the over 65. You're taking the under. We'll see how that turns out. But I'm also taking Tennessee plus 2.5. I just think their advantage in the run game is going to be too much in this one. And if Hendon Hooker plays, you know, that gives me a lot more confidence. Again, I can't bet even $1 on any of this Tennessee games unless I know for sure that Joe Milton is not the guy at quarterback. But for Nick Cole, I'm Christopher Smith for the 14, and we'll talk to you next week.